Hey everyone, it's Silver Seeker, and in today's video, we are going to talk about how the value of the dollar affects the value of gold and silver. If you didn't know that gold and silver can go up and down without actually changing price at all, make sure you watch this video, guys. We're going to talk about it right now. Okay guys, so like I said, we are going to talk about how the value of the US dollar can actually affect the price of silver without even changing the value of silver at all, but it can definitely cause a difference. And this actually works with not just silver, but pretty much any commodity, as well as just anything, you know, even when you get down to bread and milk and eggs, and we'll get into that in a bit. Now, there's going to be two assumptions that we're going to make in this video. One, we're not going to talk about premiums. We're not going to talk about how much you have to pay over spot for the ounce of silver. We're just going to talk about it as a flat value. And then two, we are going to pretend that at the beginning of this video, silver is currently trading for just $1 an ounce. Now, I wish that were the case because I'd be able to buy a whole lot more than I can today, but that's okay. For this video alone, we, like I said, are going to pretend that it's trading for just $1. So let's just say we wake up one morning and silver's, you know, $1 an ounce, and that's great. We have an ounce of silver, so we know for every ounce of silver, we have $1. Now, let's say some sort of financial crisis hits. We go through a period of inflation. Now, all of a sudden, the dollar just isn't as strong as it used to be. Silver has remained at the same value that it was at the start of this video, but this dollar just isn't as strong anymore. There's not as much confidence in it. You know, the US has too much debt to other countries, and as a result, people are putting less of their value into a dollar, and then instead they're putting it into whether it be another currency or whether it be something like precious metals, or just a way for them to move their money out of this and into something that they trust a little bit more. So let's say that that happens. And, you know, we're going through a period of hyperinflation, and now all of a sudden, this ounce of silver, even though it's the same value that it was in a world market, you know, being able to barter with it, you know, let's say this ounce of silver was worth a loaf of bread, and so was this dollar, but now the dollar is weaker. So this dollar will no longer buy this ounce of silver, nor will it also buy the loaf of bread. Instead, now we need $2 to buy this ounce of silver. Do you see what I'm saying? So even without the value of silver changing at all, we now need $2 to buy the ounce of silver instead of just $1. And that would go across the board. That would also go for selling your silver back or using your silver in barter or trade. Okay, so now let's say that, you know, this keeps happening. We keep going through this run of hyperinflation, right? Silver is still the same value worldwide as far as being able to barter it with it for, you know, the necessities like food, you know, milk, water, eggs, you know, bread, things like that, to barter with it for tools that you might need to plow a field or to even plant a garden so you can grow your own food. Well, now the value of our dollar keeps deflating. No one has any more confidence in it. It's not actually backed by anything. The U.S. has trillions and trillions of dollars in debt. And as a result, people no longer trust the U.S. dollar. So they're going to get rid of their US dollars and want to buy something else with it. And when you see a flood of US dollars coming in to buy other commodities, the value of the dollar drops. Now, instead of $2 for this 1 ounce of silver, we might need $22, or we might need $42 for this ounce of silver. So if you would have been stacking silver back when silver was just $1 an ounce, you would now be able to trade your ounce of silver for $42 instead of the dollar that you originally invested into it. And you would be able to use this $42 to go out and buy your milk or bread or whatever, just like you would have been able to before hyperinflation hit, because this ounce of silver is still worth in trade basically the same amount as the loaf of bread, or $42, which is what a loaf of bread is going for example. So you'd be able to trade your 1 ounce of silver and get the current silver value of $42 because of inflation. And you would be able to use this $42 to buy a loaf of bread, whether, you know, or whatever it is. You get my point. I mean, we're just using bread as an example. And it's that right there, guys, in my opinion, why it is very, very important to invest in a commodity such as a precious metal, something that you can physically hold, have in your hand, keep in your own safe, rather than, you know, a paper or a stock contract. And I would never tell people not to invest in stocks, because obviously that's a good way to make money. But at the same time, you know, if the world ever blows up, you're not going to be able to turn those stocks into cash, but you might be able to use this to still do some bartering. And I've heard the argument from, you know, the haters out there that say, well, if things ever get that bad, people aren't going to really care about your silver. They're going to be more interested in having guns and ammo, and they're going to be more interested in having food, and they're going to be more interested in having tools. That very well may be the case, but you got to remember, you may not be able to store all that stuff, or you may not have all that stuff, or there may be something that you thought you needed or you didn't think that you needed that you now need, or you ran out of something, like you ran out of medicine. Well, if you don't have anything to trade for what you need, whether it's milk or medicine or anything, how are you going to get it? What are you going to trade for it? So eventually, and there always has been, if you think about it, going back as far as we have history books for, there's always been something that has been used as currency to trade for goods and services. And that's always going to be the case. And silver and gold historically have been one of those items. And that's why I said it's always good to have some silver and gold in your stash so that you can use it to do those trades for things that you forgot to stack. Yes, of course. In this scenario that you guys are talking about, yes, of course, guns and ammo, food and water, and survival skills and tools and things that you need to survive are going to be more valuable than silver. But you're not always going to be able to have everything all at the same time. And there's always going to be someone out there that tries to provide for people things that they didn't think they needed, or that they didn't know they needed and they now need. And that person is going to want something that he can then trade for something that he needs, that he forgot to keep, that he forgot to get enough of, or that he ran out of. And let's say you need a tool, and let's say the guy that has the tools needs a loaf of bread. Well, the person that has the bread doesn't need tools. So he would then need something to trade to the guy who has the bread, that he can then trade for something that the tool guy doesn't have. So you would trade the guy an ounce of silver, the guy for your tool. The ounce of silver would go from the guy with the tools to the guy with the bread. And now the guy with the bread has the ounce of silver that he can then trade for something else. Again, I'm not saying that this is ever going to happen, but what I will tell you is that it has happened. It has happened a number of times in recent history, going back to early 2000s Zimbabwe, or even more recently Venezuela. And if you think that it can't happen in the US, think again. It absolutely can happen in the US, because we are in so much debt to so many other countries that eventually something is going to have to happen. We are going into more and more and more and more and more debt every single year. How far down that rabbit hole are we able to go before eventually people just stop having confidence in this stuff? That's a real good question to ask yourself, and that's something you should really think about. In my opinion, guys, stack the silver while you can before it really hits the numbers where you can just no longer buy it. Before this $1, again, in this scenario, only buys a half ounce of silver, or only a quarter ounce of silver, or before it goes down. Again, it has happened. It has happened before. It will happen again. Many countries have went through massive hyperinflation that caused their money to be worth nothing. If you look at Zimbabwe back in 2006, they were printing $100 trillion bills, $100 trillion bills that were only worth about $50 US. Now compare that to the 80s Zimbabwe dollar that was worth about $1.50 of US. Yes. So the Zimbabwe dollar is worth about $1.50 US, and then fast forward 20 years, and it takes $100 trillion of Zimbabwe dollars to equal $50 in US, if you think about it like that, or $2 trillion per dollar. So if in the 80s the Zimbabwe person would have taken their dollar and bought silver, now they'd be able to trade their 1 ounce of silver for $2 trillion rather than put the $1 under their mattress, and that's all they would have had. Now they have $2 trillion instead of one Zimbabwe dollar. And while 2 trillion Zimbabwe dollars isn't worth much, it's certainly going to be worth more than one. So what would you have rather had your money in? A commodity like silver and gold, or a dollar bill that you hid under your mattress? That's the real question you need to ask yourself. Are you going to be prepared? Make sure you're stacking. And again, it may never happen here. I'm not saying it will. I'm not saying I have a crystal ball. Maybe everything will be fine. But when you look at the U.S. being so far in debt, farther in debt than it's ever been, and it continues to grow exponentially, and we keep printing more and more money, eventually nobody is going to trust this dollar. Nobody. You better have something that they will trust, like gold and silver. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. Like I said, I hope you learned something, and we will see you in the next one, guys. If you haven't done so yet, do me a favor. Make sure you like and subscribe. Hey guys, thank you so much for joining me in this video. I hope that you enjoyed it. I do want to really quickly give a huge shout out to my channel members. Thank you so much for all of your support. Guys above me, if you haven't subscribed yet, make sure you click and subscribe.
And over here, you can check out some of the other videos I have posted. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.